Om Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnu Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannabadanam Dhyaye Sarva Vighnopashantaye Ishvaro Gururatmete Muktiveda Vibhagine Vyomavad Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Punaktu Sarvaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we are looking at chapter 9. This chapter is called Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. We'll see, the meaning will be obvious when we start looking at the verses. But essentially, in this chapter, two topics are covered. Remember, we are looking at Ishvara and Bhakti. So, one topic is Sri Krishna talks about Ishvara, Ishvara Swarupam. What is the nature of Bhagavan? So, in some traditions, this itself will be blasphemous. Because, so who are we to know? Of course, we can't know what Bhagavan is, the Lord is infinite. So, even just to that God is unknowable. In fact, Bhagavan is understood that way. Even though we say that, how can you seek to know God? Because God is unknowable. But in a way, you can also say when you make a statement like that, that is how you understand God. Okay. So you understand God as being unknowable. Okay. So based on that understanding, then are all your other conclusions. Okay. So it is not that when somebody says God is unknowable, they are really talking about it not knowing something. When you say it is unknowable, but then that becomes your definition of God. That means that is how you are knowing God. That is how you are understanding God. So everybody, whether they have some faith, a particular faith or not, or they say they believe in God or they don't believe in God, they have some kind of a concept of Bhagavan. You have to have some kind of a concept in your mind of what Bhagavan means to you in order to then come to a conclusion whether this is an idea that you accept or you don't accept, or you believe or you don't believe. So, thus, we also in our tradition, we understand the Lord in a certain way. What we mean by that, by the word. So, here, that is what is talked about. So, when we say, so I'm trying to understand what is Bhagwan, Ishwarasya Swarupam. So, what is the nature? What is the essential nature of the Lord? What do you mean by essential nature? Essential nature is so that nature which defines something. So, in a way, which doesn't go away. See, definitions can be different based on different perceptions or different standpoints. Whereas a definition of a thing that describes it as it is, so called yathartha jnana, that is a understanding which cannot be negated. So when I say Ishwarasya Swarupam, what is the Swarupam of the Lord? How I understand that? Is this so I have to have some kind of an understanding which in itself is complete. It cannot be negated by some other thinking, or also which is not from a certain standpoint alone. So it's the changeless definition. Anyway, so that we will see how we understand that. So Ishwarasya Swarupam is one topic. And then the other topic that is talked about is bhakti or devotion. So the chapter begins by Bhagavan Sri Krishna pointing out the nature of the knowledge itself. Because of course you have to first know, we have to have some kind of an idea. of what we mean when we say I know something or I don't know something. So here it talks about what is the nature of this knowledge which is connected to the to Bhagavan, to the Lord. So you see, verse 1, idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshamyanasuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajnatva mokshyase shubhat. So this is Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So this is coming from Sri Krishna. Says, idam tu te guhyatamam jnanam. Okay. Idam jnanam. This particular knowledge. What do you mean by this? What is being talked about here? So he's talked about this the Brahma Jnanam, or the knowledge of. So what is the nature of Ishvara? What is the nature of the truth? What is the nature of that which sustains this whole experience of mine, including myself and the world, which is what we call as Brahman. So the knowledge of that entity, all Brahma Jnanam, or which is also, he says, so moksha prapti sadhanam. So this knowledge, as we have seen, so it is a knowledge, so gaining which I I achieve a particular kind of an end, and that end is called as moksha, which means so freedom. It is the end that I am, the ultimate end that a human being can achieve. So knowing this knowledge, one can gain that end. Idam te te pravakshyami. I am going to tell you. I am going to talk about right now. So this knowledge, which is what kind of a knowledge is this? Vijnana sahitam. It is not. It is a knowledge, and which is also along with the vijnanam thereof. Okay, so there are. I can have a knowledge of a subject matter like mathematics or physics. This is a knowledge. I can know physics. But when I know physics, I don't become physics. When I know math, I don't become math. Whereas this is a knowledge which is different, a little bit different. Knowing this knowledge, I gain something. So it says Anubhava Yuktam. So Anubhava Sahitam is a knowledge by knowing which I accomplish something that I am seeking to accomplish. For example, I want to be somebody, you know, which I don't know. I don't know what I want to be. I want to be somebody, and then I'm told that hey, you are that person, or you already are that person, or you already have. I lost my keys, for example, and then I'm looking for the keys. I want to recover the keys, and then somebody tells me, hey, these keys are dangling from your pocket, so you didn't notice it. So here, this knowledge of the keys is a little different than say a knowledge of what is keys. So there, I'm not connected. Here, by knowing that I have the keys, I become the possessor of the keys. So I gain something which I was looking for by knowing. So one can have a knowledge sometimes. I just know about an object and I know which I did not know before. Or I know something and then I gain it also of something which I was looking for. It's a little different kind of a knowledge. The knowledge of the accomplished as opposed to the knowledge of something which I am trying to accomplish. So things like that. So here when he says Vijnana Sahitam, he says a knowledge along with something which is gainable by me. Anubhava Yukam, which I can experience. In other words, sometimes they use the word experience. So knowing and experiencing it for myself. This kind of a knowledge I'm going to talk to you about. Not only that, so he describes a little bit more about the knowledge. So Guhyatamam, this jnanam is Guhyatamam. Guhyatamam is Guhyam is the secret. So that which is a big secret. So this secret is not a literal literal meaning, secret. What is it that it is something which is what makes something a secret? Which is difficult to understand. Therefore, it is guhya. So not because somebody is deliberately holding it from you. I can have a secret which I keep from you, or I can have a secret. The knowledge itself is a secret. It's not that the knowledge is being kept a secret. When the knowledge itself is a secret, what does knowledge do really? It reveals, right? Knowledge of something reveals to me the nature of, or anyway, any knowledge is revealing. So here, this knowledge is a knowledge of something which has to be revealed, but which is difficult to recognize by me. The knowledge itself always reveals, but then is a person who's exposed to the knowledge either gets it or doesn't get it. If it is something difficult to get, to understand, then it looks like a secret which is being kept from me. But really speaking, it's not that the knowledge is being kept from me, it is my capacity or my ease or difficulty in understanding the knowledge that makes this difficult because there are certain requirements. This knowledge of Ishvara, remember, that is the subject matter. So it is Guhyatama. In the other sense, this is difficult. Why should it be difficult for us to know what the Lord is? Why should it be difficult? Really speaking, it should be easy. It should be easy because we are it's a common denominator. Bhagavan is a common denominator for the whole creation, for all the human beings. So why is it so difficult? Well, for a lot of reasons. One is interest. First of all, so there are very few people who are even interested in this. So because there are so many interests and so many distractions, then even if the interest is there sometimes, it is not a priority, obviously. So there are so many other priorities which human beings have. There may be a priority, but then one has to what? There's so many factors. One has to be prepared for any knowledge. Adhikaritvam has to be there. The mind has to be there. It has to have the proper kind of an understand. To understand something, you have to be ready for that understanding. So it has to be it should be informed enough to even know what to know. So these are the kinds of things that make it difficult. Then resources sometimes. So I have to have a means of knowledge. So I have to have a capacity to understand. Sometimes I need somebody to explain. So these are the kinds of difficulty that make the knowledge difficult. Not because this is something that in itself is easy or difficult, like I've said before many times. So 2 plus 2 is 4 is it easy or difficult? Well, it can be easy or it can be difficult. It all depends on the mind of the person. So this Guhyatamam Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam, he says, Pravakshyami Anasuyave. Anasuyave. So he addresses Arjuna with this term. One who's devoid of asuya, the one who is free from asuya, the one who is overcome. Asuya is a so it is a characteristic. So asuya sometimes they translate as jealousy, or asuya also means guneshu dosha darshanam. Finding fault with people is also called as asuya. So we constantly finding fault with people, judging, having a judgmental attitude. So you look upon somebody as if I am in a position to sit and figure out, and judge human beings. So, being judgmental is different from having a judgment. Sometimes I think we get mixed up. So, for example, this happens. So, if there is somebody who doesn't want to be accountable, and I say something to that person, he's saying, who are you to judge me? Or you're being judgmental. This happens so many times. So, I try to say something to a person. That person doesn't want to be asked a question. So to shut me up, he says, "You are being judgmental." And then I say, "Oh, yeah, maybe I'm being judgmental. So I should not judge anyone." No. So this is another thing, value. So I have a value. I should not judge anyone. I should just accept people. So, this is also a problem. When you don't judge anybody, then you lose your judgment. Sometimes we have to have a good judgment. We should always have a good judgment. So having a good judgment is different than being judgmental. Judgmental is an attitude. One has to have proper judgment. One has to learn how to judge properly, rightfully, so fairly, but at the same time, not have an attitude where I'm simply so criticizing people, finding fault with them, and living. That is what is called as being judged. That is asuya. So asuya is not just not being judging anything. That is not what a judge judges a case, but it should not be judgmental. It should not have preconceived opinions, preconceived judgment, but objectively be able to judge. That is also very important. So he addresses Arjuna as somebody who had that capacity. So he's not a person who just simply jumps to conclusion. He's a person who has good judgment. So therefore, I'm telling you this. So he thinks that it's going to work for him. Yad jnatva mokshyase ashubhat. Ashubhat. So knowing this knowledge, what am I going to get out of it? Well, you're going to be free from what is ashubham. Ashubham is, so we have this term, Shubham and Ashubham. Shubham is that which is auspicious. Ashubham is that which is not considered auspicious. What is not considered auspicious? So bandhanam, samsara bandhanat, he says. So samsara, anything that makes me so feel bound, feel limited, feel unhappy, takes me away from the truth, from myself, from growth, etc. So any of these things will fall under the category of Ashubham. So this is Ashubham. It's not auspicious for me. It's not good for my well-being. Number two. So then he tells a little bit more about this knowledge. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitramidam Uttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartum Avyayam. So Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. So this is a knowledge. What kind of a knowledge? It is Raja Vidya. Raja Vidya. Raja Vidya means so king of knowledges. King of knowledge. What is it that makes it a king? Well, Rajra. Rajra Deepta. The word Raja means that which illumines. Deepta is the one, Deepam, like a Deepam illumines. So that which is so self-luminant, he says. Swayam Rajate, that which shines by itself. Therefore, a king is called as a Raja. So he really doesn't depend on others. You know, president is not Raja. President not. Sometimes presidents think they are Rajas. But he's not a Raja because he's not Swayam Rajate. He is elected. He is elected. So we elect a person and then we elect a person, make him a president. And then he has all the power. But then it is time limited. Raja is not like that. Raja is somebody who holds the power. So who is the king? And then everything else follows behind him. It's the definition of Raja. So Atma is like that. So it's not dependent on anything else. Anyway, so this is a knowledge that is connected to Atma, that is connected to the Lord. So the one who is Bhagavan, the Lord is one who shines in his own glory. It's not dependent on anything else. So that being the subject matter of this knowledge is called as Rajavidya. Okay. Then also among all the Vidyas, it is the most exalted. Right? That way also. So because of course because of the subject matter. Rajaguhyam. Yeah. Guhyam we already said before. So this is also not just a simple secret, because it is the king of all the secrets, like a magician's secret. So a magician's secret. So as long as you don't know what the secret is, the whole thing looks just like totally amazing. It's impossible. So making the impossible as possible, and so is what is a it looks like a magic. But then once you know the secret, then in fact the whole you lose the whole all that thing impressed you. You say, you know what, you feel stupid actually. Because I should have figured this out. This is so simple. I'm surprised how I didn't figure this out. So it is too simple. But at the same time, when it is unknown, it is like, in fact, Bhagwan's secret is like that. The nature of the Lord is like that. Once you know, it is something so obvious and simple, but at the same time, when it is unknown, then that is the world's greatest magic. Therefore, he's called Mayavi. Bhagwan is called as the great magician because his secret is so simple, but like any magician's secret, it is Rajaguhyam. Not only that, Pavitram, Idam Uttamam. So among Pavitrana, Pavitram. Among all the things, what is Pavitram? Pavitram is that which purifies. There are many things that purify. How do we purify things? It's just symbolically. So we purify, we use elements to, what else are you going to use? So different elements are used for purifying, even for religious purification, I mean. Of course, you take a bath in order to clean our body. That is one kind. But even for religious purification, so we use the different elements. For example, prokshana. You do prokshana with the water. So with waters which are not any water. So water which is sanctified. I sanctify the water. How do you sanctify the water? You know, See, I use water to purify the ravyas, the objects of worship, and the person, etc. That's why you sprinkle water. But that means now it can't be any water. It has to be holy water, right? It has to be holy water. So how does water become holy water? Not by filtration. It becomes holy water by, so then that is purified by mantras, naturally. So by mantras, by prayers, by ritual, the water gets purified. So that means mantras are also purificatory. Water is purificatory. So then other dravyams also are purified. So we have traditionally in pujas, etc., we use ajyam, for example. Ghee is purificatory. So that's why they add some ghee to the rice. The rice. Before you offer the rice, before rice is offered, that's why people who have a problem, cholesterol problem, have a big problem if they're orthodox, because you have, when I go to India and then they give food. And then if you put on all these kinds of clothes, then people expect you to be orthodox. They expect you to be orthodox. So now I have a cholesterol problem. The doctor says don't eat ghee. Don't eat ghee. And I go there. And then now this is food is eating is a ritual. Eating is an offering. So I'm offering the food to Ishvara, who's in the form of Jatharagni within me, who consumes the food. So Bhagavan is there. So eating itself is a offering. So therefore, that's why we make pranaya swaha and all. I put we start with rice. Annam is the real offering is annam, because it is what is called as this the basic food. Rice is considered the basic staple. That's what we mean by staple. It's a staple food. It's not an accessory food. It's not a side dish. It's the main dish. Rice shouldn't be a side dish. In the West, rice is a side dish. Steak is the main dish. Rice is the side dish. For us, rice is the main dish. Well, that's anna. That is the basic staple. Now, this I have to offer to Bhagavan. So I have to purify it. How do I purify it? By ajam. So ajam becomes purificator. Same ajam I offer to the, no, that purifies the rice and then the rice I offer. Now, in rituals, ghee is offered. Correct? Ghee is offered. Now, ghee purifies. But when I offer the ghee, before the ghee is offered, it has to be purified. Okay? Now, look at this. How interesting these things are. So now the ghee has to be purified before I make. How do I purify the ghee? What does the priest do? What is it? So if you notice, see, this is all where you notice. If you notice, he will take this darba. He takes the darba. He puts it in the fire. He puts in the fire, and then so when it is lit, the fire, then that he puts in the ajam. Correct? You notice that? So he touches. So that means there he uses the darba and the agni. So Agni also purifies. So you use Agni to purify the Ajam, which is then offered, purified. Then that purified is offered to the Agni. So, it's like each one has to purify the other. So it's just fascinating. The idea is, so there are many things that we use, elements, whether it is Agni, whether it is Apaha, water, or whether it is Dharma, or whether it is Anna, all different kinds of things which are purificatory, but they're all pavitra. They make me pure in terms of attitude, knowledge, and so on. But of all this is one of these things. It's not one of these things. This is of all the things that can purify me, including mantras and all. This knowledge is the one that really purifies everything because it takes the ignorance away. Once the ignorance goes away, then all my really other impurities are based on that ignorance. Ignorance of the Lord, ignorance of my Swarupam, Bhagwan Swarupam. Therefore, this Raja Vidya is also the most, it is Uttamam, it is Pavitram, the most purifying. Not only that, he says, so Dharmyam, it is Dharmyam. Dharma means, so that is consistent with Dharma. Okay. The knowledge of Bhagavan is consistent with that which is Dharma. Knowledge of the Lord, really. Sometimes we think in our culture, the one who knows, the wise man, the one who knows the Lord, the one who knows himself. So he is above everything, right? Above Dharma and Adharma. So dharma and adharma is all worldly, and this person is beyond dharma and adharma. What does that mean? What does that mean? Nothing touches him or her. That means whether he does dharmic things or whether he does adharmic things, it doesn't make any difference. Very good. Who said that? Who said that? Really? It's not like that. That's what the people think. That's why these fellows get away with everything, murder. So you get away with murder if you think like that. But no, you are not above everything because because so the knowledge and wisdom has to express also in the world. And what is its expression? If it is above right and wrong, and if right and wrong are equal, that means its expression can be right or it can be wrong because it is above everything. And that is how sometimes it is understood, which is not true. Which is not true. That's why when somebody does wrong things, then we say, oh, but he also does right things. So what does one has to do with the other? Really speaking, one doesn't have anything to do with it. We say, okay, he does some right things and he does some wrong things. Not that he does the wrong thing, he also does right things, so the wrong is okay. No, it's not okay because said, therefore, how should the knowledge of Ishvara, how would it express itself? Would it express itself either way? Or would it be in a particular way? Says no. Knowledge, this knowledge is dharmyam. That means it is consistent with dharma. In other words, when it is expressed, so in the mind of a person who knows, that expression will be consistent with what is dharma. Not that anything the person does is dharma, okay, but what the person does will be dharmic. That should be my expectations, either from somebody else or from myself. From myself. So thus, it is a very different thing. So it is dharmiyam. Otherwise, it would say it is something which transcends dharma. Dharma. It doesn't say like that. So yad dharmiyam susukham pratyakshaavagamam. It is that which can be known, and that can be known and experienced. Means known for myself, experience myself again. It is not something which is outside of myself. It is something also connected to myself. It is not just a matter of knowing, but it is something that is knowing, and I have to know it as being true to myself. Otherwise, it is just some bit of information. It's not an information bit or an information byte. It's a information that I feel is and I know to be true for myself. Susukham kartum avyayam. Susukham kartum. It is that which gives joy, that gives happiness. And also that is susukham means that which can be gained easily. It's not that difficult to gain. It's an effort. There are different types of efforts. Some effort involve a lot of pain, like going to the gym, the exercise. It's a big pain all over the place. Pain all over the body, not only in some places, but pain is a big pain. You have to go, you have to do, you have to suffer, and all this problem. And then you have to do again and every day, every day. You wonder why do you have to do? Should be like something going to the doctor. You go to the doctor once in a while when you're sick. So there is some you put on some weight, go to the gym and be over and no. You have to keep going. So there's a lot of pain, the effort with pain. But then sometimes there is an effort which is painless. Effort which is painless. He gives an example. We've got a very good example. So he says, anayasam yatha ratna viveka jnanam. This is I didn't know this. So when I was young, you think, what am I going to be when what do you want to be when you grow up? So he says this is a good thing, profession. So he's a gemologist. Gemologist. You become a gemologist. Now, I wish I knew this. What is your job? Your job is to look at gems and then decide the value. So is this genuine? This is not genuine. Whatever. There are people like that. So their job is to tell you whether the diamonds or the all of the jewelry, gems and all, whether they are real or not. Whether they are real. Now, and he gets paid. Suppose you get paid good money for it also, because anyone dealing with these stones is not a poor man. So you're going to spend a lot of money. If you're going to spend a lot of money, he wants to make sure that it is genuine. He can't figure out. So he can't tell the difference between a crystal and a diamond. So you need an expert. So it's a well-paying job. But just imagine your job. So even when you're sitting there and analyzing, it's beautiful to look at. Nobody ever complains about looking at a piece of gem or a jewelry. So if somebody, next time if your kids ask you, so dad, what do you think I can become? You should give them this idea option. You be so gain this Ratna Viveka Jnana. Become a gemologist. You'll be a very happy. Only don't think of the fact that I don't have any of these. All other people tell. But then still, you're getting paid for it. But then just to your whole 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day is just looking at these beautiful things. So that is this knowledge is like that, really. Knowledge is like that. There is no burden here. We think there is a burden. We struggle to go sit in a puja. But then really, I have to discover some gem. If I discover something like a gem in that, then it's not a burden anymore. It is something that I look forward to doing. So this is like that. It is susukham. It is something that not only gives me happiness at the end, but even the process itself is not a painful process, which is a different thinking. Sometimes we think, oh, the journey to spiritual growth, the journey to knowing God, the journey to paradise is so difficult. It is like walking on a sword's edge. And then they give this example, and then you just start thinking of all the cuts on your feet. How can you walk on a sword's edge? And it's not like that. It's always in Shastram, it will always say it is susukham. It is a pleasant journey, because how can it be unpleasant when it is connected to Bhagavan or connected to something that gives happiness? So, Bhavyayam, Nityam, this phalam, the result that I get at the end of this jnanam is not something that goes away. So that which gives, so phalam has no, does it come and go? It is a constant thing, that kind of a sukha. Okay. Having said this, and he also talks about what is that Ishvara. And number 4. Look at 4. Maya tatamidam sarvam जगदव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः. So, Ishvara. What do you mean by Ishvara? What do you mean by the Lord? So, in our tradition, the way we understand Lord, Bhagwan, when you say, we are referring to something. So that is the cause of all this, right? Why is this? Where did this world come from? So, because of whom I find myself here, I find the world here, and everything else that goes with it. So that because means the cause from which everything has come. That is what we mean by the Lord, by Bhagavan, by Ishvara, all these different terms that we use. And then we all have different ideas of what that cause is. So he says, so Bhagavan, Sri Krishna identifies himself as though the Lord, if the Lord were to say, what would he say? In terms of this Swarupa. It says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Avyakta murtina goes with Maya. Yesterday we were saying this. Cases here to see. So Maya means by me. By me. Who is this me? Which is avyakta murtina. That which is not manifest. Okay. Means that which is essential. Here he's talking about Ishvara's Swarupa, the nature of the. So, how do we understand Ishvara? In terms of the Swarupa. So, he says, me, that which is. So, Bhagavan we look upon as, so that which is manifest and that which is essential. You can have a manifest and unmanifest. That's one way of looking at it. Or you have manifest and so essential. Okay, it's a little different. They're a little different. So when something is potential, when I say manifest, so it can be manifest or potential, right? Like the tree is manifest, but it's potential in the seed. So that is one kind of a potential and then manifest. But then here he talks about it in terms of standpoints. So a standpoint, when I look at if I take a gold bangle, okay. So in a gold bangle, what happens? So its nature is that of being gold. But then in a particular form, it is called as a bangle. So there are two ways of looking at it. If I look at it from a functional standpoint, then it is a bangle. Correct? It's a bangle because it has a certain function. And that function, it is not a ring, it is not a chain, it's a bangle. So it only has a particular, you can't put it around your neck. So you can only put it around your wrist. So that is what makes it a bangle. So this is the manifest. It's a function. It's a functional entity. But then it also has its own essential nature, which is gold. That is not the functional aspect of it. That is its essential aspect. So we can say one is the swarupa, one is what is essential, what it really is, and the other one is what is the functional aspect, what is the manifest function. That is manifest and manifest. So it says Maya idam sarvam jagat tatam. Tatam is vyaptam, pervade. So this whole creation, jagat. What do you mean by jagat? Jagat is so translated as the whole manifest universe. The universe that I experience is Jagat. It says Maya Vyaptam. It is pervaded by me. The whole universe is pervaded by me. In other words, there is something that pervades this whole universe, which is what we understand as Bhagavan Swarupa. Okay. So, what is Ishvara? So, Ishvara is that thing which pervades this whole universe. Okay, we'll get to that. He says, so how? Because we have seen, so from as Swarupam, Ishvara, what is the nature of Ishvara? So it is in the form of Sat Chitan Anandam. That's how it's described. Satyam Jnanam Anandam. So the essential Swarupam, that which exists. So that which exists, that which is in the form of awareness, is that which pervades. Now, when you look at the experience, you can look at it from an individual standpoint or from a total standpoint. So, in my individual experience of the world, what is the constant thing? The constant, I am aware of everything. So, he says, everything I pervade. That means there is nothing that is outside of my scope. You know, when something pervades something, pervasiveness, generally we look upon it in terms of spatially, in spatial terms. Here it is not just spatial. So, like, the air pervades this space, this particular room, for example, I say. So here it is in terms of space. But then space pervades this room also. Space pervades this room. But then, air can move about in space. But space itself doesn't move. So that pervasiveness is different. The pervasiveness of air is different from the pervasiveness of space, correct? Because space is infinite and air is finite. It occupies a finite area. So here he'll give that example in the next verse. But here he says, Maya idam sarvam jagat uh, tatam. Tatam is vyaptam. Matsthani sarva bhutani. So how is it that I pervade everything? I pervade everything because there is nothing that is outside of me. So therefore, everything that there is within me. Thus, Sarva Bhutani Matsthani. All the beings are Matsthani. Matsthani in the sense, either can be they are in me or they exist because of me. Their very existence depends on me. So I become the ashraya, the substrate, because of which everything is there. So there is something because of which everything exists. You know, there is something because of which everything exists. In other words, the existence of the whole world is dependent on this one thing, and on which it's a, therefore all this depend on this. They are existing on this, and in that way, I pervade everything. Correct. So if I say, like the rule of law, suppose there is a king, and then the king says, I what I say pervades this whole kingdom. So in other words, so the whole functioning of the kingdom takes place because of the laws that come from this entity. So that is the pervasiveness. Okay. So his law pervades, his power pervades, his force pervades, his influence pervades. So that is how you understand pervasiveness in different ways. It is not just in terms of dimension, spatial dimension. Here it says Bhagavan, because of me, this whole Jagat exists, has its existence, it functions, and thus I, in that way, I am Vyaptam. You will not find a place in this Jagat where my presence is not going to be there. It says, Maya idam sarvam Jagat Vyaptam. Then, what about all these things then? Well, they don't exist without me. I sustain them. Madsthani sarvabhutani. So at the same time, I sustain them. Na nacha aham teshu avastita. I sustain them, but they don't sustain me. Yeah. Sometimes something can sustain you, you know so you say, like, I will take care, like when you take care of somebody, I will take care of you, I will take care of you. So the person so exists because of you. You're taking care, you're sustaining the person, like your children, you sustain the person. But then sometimes what happens, the thing that you sustain, like a pet, so you have a pet, you get a pet, and they're totally dependent on you. So anything you have to sustain the pet. But then after a while, what happens? So you're not sure who's sustaining whom. Who's sustaining the pet is the fellow who keeps you going. Because without the pet is gone, this fellow is gone. So it can become an interdependent relationship. So it says Bhagavan, Bhagavan sustains us. But what is he going to be without us? What is, it's like somebody pushes you around. Okay, you get pushed around, you get pushed around. But then if you are not there, but then this person is lost because he needs somebody to push around. And then so you realize this, and then he says, well, he thinks he's pushing me around, but really speaking, so he thinks he's pushing, but he's not. Because if I can walk away, but without me, he's going to be. So this kind of a tip. So Bhagavan depends on us, because if we are not going to sit down and worshiping, then what's going to happen to him? So he needs us as much as we need them. No, it's not like that. He says everything, this whole world is something that depends on Bhagavan. At the same time, I am not somebody who's dependent on them or for my being. That is one, like gold and chain. So without the gold, there is no bangle. But at the same time, gold doesn't depend on the bangle for its existence. It can be free of it. So one is dependent, one is independent. So Matsthani Sarvabhutani. All these beings are all these beings are existing in me, dependent on me. Okay, good. Then next sentence he says, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani Pashyame Yogamayshwaram. भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थः आत्मा भूतभावनः. So, having said Matsthani Sarva Bhutani, the next verse he says, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani. Just the opposite. So, all the beings are in me, they are sustained by me. Then he says, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani. Nobody is dependent on me. Nobody is dependent on me. The beings are not dependent on me. So what do you mean? If you want to know, and somebody has studied Gita properly, so you should ask him, sir, can you please explain these two verses? So one says Matsthani Sarva Bhutani, then he says Nacha Matsthani Bhutani. What is it really? It is exactly the opposite. So here, when I say one thing rests on another, then I may think there are two things naturally. So there is Bhagavan and there is Jagat. Bhagavan is the one who, this is one idea of understanding the Lord. So Lord is one being and the world is something that is different. And this one is the boss and he is bossing around the whole thing. And these are two different things. And one depends on the other. Okay? One rests on the other. Like a vase resting on the table. Two things are there. So he said, this whole Jagat is there. That is Matsthani. That is resting on me, dependent on me. And thereby I pervade the whole thing. There is nothing in this world that is outside. Great. Now he says, so then I think, okay, now there are two things now. Now he says, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani. It is not that this Jagat actually rests on me. So what do you mean now? Well, the only thing that can mean is because there is really, the bangle rests on the gold. The bangle is dependent on the gold. So then you think, so there are how many things are here now? Bangle and gold. Bangle rests on the gold. But really speaking, is there such a thing as a bangle? Is there such a thing as a bangle that is resting on the gold? Like you rest on the sofa. Like you rest on the sofa. Sofa is there, you are there. There are two things. When I say when the bangle is resting on the gold, are there two things really? There are no two things. There is only the gold. Really speaking, there is only gold. There is no bangle. Bangle is not an entity. It is just the gold. When you're wearing, you know, when you wear this on your wrist and you go through customs, you have a big bangle and you going through customs. And this fellow stops you. And then you say, did you buy this? Did you declare it or not? Did you declare it? You say, no, I didn't declare it. You say, why didn't you declare it? It's just a bangle. It's a bangle. There's a bangle. You don't want me to declare bangles, do you? No. He's saying, no, this is not a bangle. This is gold. You're bringing gold into the country. You're not supposed to bring unlimited this much amount of gold without declaring. Say, no, sir, this is not gold. It is only a bangle. No. He says, I don't recognize a bangle. In fact, he says, there is no bangle here. This is only gold. So that means what? Even though what you're wearing is now you ask yourself, am I wearing gold or am I wearing bangle? Well, am I wearing gold? You can't say I'm wearing gold because gold you can wear anywhere. But now you're only wearing it on your wrist. So that means it's not just gold. No, it's a golden bangle. Why are you playing with words? It's a golden bangle, but then true, but it's a functional. So the bangle is just a functional entity, which has a function, no doubt. And it's an entity, no doubt, but that is not the real thing. So here he says, that means now the world rests in me, but now the world doesn't rest in me. That means what? That means this is something like a bangle, something like a bangle. Well, perhaps. So this is an entity that I'm experiencing, which in itself doesn't stand out as separate from that from which it has come, that from which it rests. Like the bangle doesn't really stand out as a separate entity, separate from that from which it is, that on which it is resting. Correct? So Jagat, the world that I experience, now this has come from something. This is sustained by something. This is resting on something. But at the same time, it is not a distinct entity. When you analyze, when you look into the, therefore, when I look into the nature of the world, what happens? If I look into, as long as I see the bangle, I can wear the bangle. But when I look into the nature of the bangle, then I have to declare it. Correct? Then I have to declare it. In the sense, the experience goes away. The bangle is no longer a bangle, even though I'm still wearing it, because it has disappeared. That is what is called as mithya. That is what is called as mithya. So when you say this Jagat, Jagat is Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. Ishvara is Satyam, is the truth, is the truth which sustains everything. And whatever it is that sustains, when I really inquire into it, it doesn't have an independent existence of its own that is separate from, that is apart from, that from which it has come. Okay. Here, the bangle is not apart from that which it has come, the goal. Here also, Jagat is not apart from its cause, which we call as Ishvara, as an entity. At the same time, it is there, it is functional, it is what I'm dealing with, and I'm interacting it, but it doesn't stand by itself. So he says, Nachamat bhutani. There is no such thing in reality. Therefore, even though I sustain it, it's like a dream, Even though I sustain it, but that is not a real thing that I'm sustaining. And what is this? Oh, when you say oh, then when you listen to this and you say oh, then Bhagavan says, Pashya me yogam aishwar. He says, look, this is the Aishwaram. Aishwaram means so the so Ishwarasya Imam. This is wonder. This is what Aishwaryam is. So the world that the cause itself gets lost in the looks like it's lost in the effect. The gold looks like it got lost in the bangle because I only look at the bangle. You only look at the bangle. You don't look at the goal. Really speaking. So when a person, you know, so when a man gives a present, it's interesting. So to somebody, he gave a present to his wife, and then he gives her this bangle, and she looks at it. Does she look at the bangle or the gold? Hmm? She looks at the gold. Huh? Really? You really think so? Okay. So this is his experience. So now she looked at the gold. Okay, let's assume she looked at the gold. So this is a girlfriend. This girlfriend looks at the gold. So then he realized, she didn't really care of the shape and the size and the workmanship and all those things. She was very happy because it was gold. It was a gold I gave. So this is a lady who really understands what is essential, not what is the external appearance. It is what is the swarupam only she goes for. He understood this well. So now after that, one present. So now he's thinking of proposing. Thinking of proposing. In proposing now, he's told by convention he has to buy a diamond ring. This is why diamond. So he goes to the diamond. So he thinks of this. Now diamond. Is she going to really appreciate the diamond? Because she only looks at the essential. Now this fellow is a scientist. He's a scientist, so he knows diamond is carbon. Diamond is basically carbon, nothing but carbon. Then charcoal is also nothing but carbon. So she really doesn't care for the external manifestation. She only looks at the swarupam. So it doesn't really matter. So as long as it is carbon, the idea is you have to give us something made of carbon. This thinking. So all this. So this is all, it's all relative. Anyway, so these things don't work like that. So don't work like that. In any case, here what happens? It says, but so one is dependent, one is independent, and yet at the same time you experience the Jagat. He said, this is Aishwarya. Aishwaryam. Also, this is what the truth is the truth. But then Bhagavan, with respect to the truth, is what is Ishvara. I mean, with respect to the manifest, to respect to the Jagat. So he says the Jagat itself, if you look at its nature, it is not real. That's why anything we analyze, any object we analyze in the world, it doesn't stand. It's all relative. It's all definition of anything is only with respect to something else, which is what we mean by mithya, or which is why we mean by maya. So he becomes mayavi, and this is his yoga, this is his creation, this is his magic. Bhuta brin nacha bhutastaha. I'm the one who's the bhuta brit. Bhuta brit is so bhutani vivarti. I'm the one who sustains everything. At the same time, na bhutastaha. I'm not really. So now when we say everything is dependent on that Ishvara, but Ishvara is not really dependent on anything else. Okay. So therefore he says, na bhutastaha. I am not because why is that? Why is that so? Not because there are two things, but because one is only seemingly there, and one is the real, the other is the apparent. The bangle depends on the gold. The gold doesn't depend on the bangle. Why is that? Because one is real and the other one is only functional. There are no two separate things. Mamatma bhuta bhavana. Mamatma means me. The Lord, in fact, therefore becomes the bhuta bhavana, means the one who bhutani bhavayati. That which makes the beings come out, appear. Because I sustain them. So I'm the cause. As Karanam, because I am the cause, then everything else becomes the effect. We'll see much more. We'll talk much more about this Ishvara, the nature of what this Ishvara is, and then the relationship between Jagat, Ishvara, etc. All that we will see. So we'll continue next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.